A huge influence on both my own thinking and the thinking of many other atheists was Christopher Hitchens. Possessing an irresistible combination of charming wit and fierce intellect, Hitchens electrified debates on the big questions concerning God and religion, and endeared himself to a generation of the irreligious. A common theme throughout his career was his derision of totalitarianism in all its forms. Anyone who received an abundance of uncritical praise quickly became one of Hitchens' targets. With that in mind, there's a certain irony in praising Hitchens himself so highly, but it's hard not to find him inspiring. So without further ado, here's a small collection of some of Hitchens' best points made in his characteristically strong yet eloquent style, a tribute to an orator who we need now more than ever.
Several leaders of the Christian church, as you know, said about the last tsunami that it was a punishment. In Britain, several of them said it was a punishment for homosexuality. That it used to be said that earthquakes were a punishment for sodomy. Since we're doing sodomy in the Lash, I thought I might as well bring this up. Oddly enough, the San Francisco earthquake only hit when San Francisco was famous for other things. When New Orleans got flooded, the only bits that didn't get flooded were the red light district. Okay? So anyone who says they know God's mind in this had better not mind looking a bit foolish. Or, which you obviously don't, or had better say, take responsibility and say, yes, by letting it happen, God must in some way wish it to.
Let me bring Waleed...
Why would you do that?
Let me...
I would go further and say the following. I'll grant you that it would be possible to track the pregnancy of the woman Mary, who's mentioned about 3 times in the Bible, and to show there was no male intervention in her life at all. But yet she delivered herself of a healthy baby boy. I can say, I don't say that's impossible. Parthenogenesis is not completely unthinkable, but it does not prove that his paternity is divine. And it wouldn't prove that any of his moral teachings were thereby correct. Nor, if I was to see him executed one day and see him walking the streets the next, would that show that his father was God, or his mother was a virgin, or that his teachings were true, especially given the commonplace nature of resurrection at that time and place. After all, Lazarus was raised, never said a word about it. The daughter of Jairus was raised, didn't say a thing about what she'd been through. And the Gospels tell us that at the time of the crucifixion, all the graves in Jerusalem opened, and their occupants wandered around the streets to greet. So that it seems the resurrection was something of a banality at the time. Not all of those people clearly were divinely conceived. So I'll give you all the miracles, and you'll still be left exactly where you are now, holding an empty sack. It has the correct echo to me, precisely of the huckster on the racetrack saying, "How can you lose? Have I got a bet for you?" Can you imagine anything cheaper, really, or more sordid? The 2 things that it assumes, needs to assume, are these. 1, a fantastically cynical God who's also a bloody fool. I mean, a nasty and cynical person who's also so thick that he would be fooled by me saying, tell you what, on the flip coin that you exist and I need a break, I'll say I believe in you. He says, oh, I'm really impressed now. You've just undergone a moral transformation. This Blaise Pascal is considered in the first rank of Christian thinkers, I might add. The second thing it assumes, of course, is the most corrupt and vulgar kind of consumer, the sort of person who would fall for a deal like that and would think, that would be nice. I'll bet correctly.
The question is to Christopher is how you can justify wanting to take something away from people from 95 that gives meaning to 95% of the American people and replace it with something that gives meaning to just 5% of the American people.
Well, what an incredibly stupid question. First, I've said repeatedly that this stuff cannot be taken away from people. It is their favorite toy, and it will remain so, as Freud said in The Future of an Illusion, it will remain that way as long as we're afraid of death and have no problem, which is, I think, likely to be quite a long time. Second, I hope I've made it clear that I'm perfectly happy for people to have these toys and to play with them at home and hug them to themselves and so on and share them with other people who come around and play with the toys. So that's absolutely fine. They are not to make me play with these toys. Okay? I will not play with the toys. Don't bring the toys to my house. Don't say my children must play with these toys. Don't say my toys might be a condom. Here we go again. Are not allowed by their toys. I'm not going to have any of that. Enough with clerical and religious bullying and intimidation. Is that finally clear? Have I got that across? Thank you.
And one of the great opponents of the Islamic totalitarianism in ancient Persia was the great Omar Khayyam, perhaps the greatest poet of old Persia, whose Rubaiyat, I'm sure, is known at least to some of you. And my favorite verse of this comes from the Robert Le Gallienne translation, and it takes the form of a question. The quatrain is in the form of a question. It says, "And do you think that unto such as you, a maggot-minded, starved, fanatic crew, God gave a secret and denied it me? Well, well, what matters it? Believe that too." This magnificent astronomer and scientist and physician and humanist of Persia, who opposed the cruel, sadistic, verminous, ignorant mullahs of his day, I borrow the question, what is your authority for saying that you know something that I don't? It will happen to all of us that at some point you get tapped on the shoulder and told, not just that the party's over, but slightly worse, the party's going on, but you have to leave. and it's going on without you. That's the reflection, I think, that most upsets people about their demise. All right then, because it might make us feel better, let's pretend the opposite. Instead, you'll get tapped on the shoulder and told, great news, this party's going on forever, and you can't leave. You've got to stay. The boss says so, and he also insists that you have a good time. I've read about David's father. I had a bad time when my own father passed on, but the father proposed by monotheism is the father who doesn't die, who reassures his children, don't worry, I'll never leave you. You'll never see the end of me. You'll never get the chance to feel sorry. I'm always there. I'm the absolute ultimate in dictatorship, and in my courts there's no appeal. Do you really think that this would cheer up anyone of sentience or humanity or capable of feeling of irony? I submit it's out of the question. Francis Collins says at least 100,000 years. We can show we've been around for that long. It's quite a long time. I'll take 100. Never mind. I don't need 250,000 for my point. Make it 100,000. 100,000 years, our species have been around on this speck. Born, usually dying, actually a great number of them in childbirth, wouldn't have got beyond being born. For the first 80 or so, 90 or so thousand years, nearly 100, not living more than 25 to 30 years at the most, then probably dying of their teeth, if they were lucky, or of the other needless mammalian things that show us that we bear the stamp, as Darwin put it, of our lowly origin, the appendix we don't need anymore, innumerable other shortcomings of our design. We're designed to live on the savannah that we've escaped from. Terrible disease, suffering, misery, malnutrition, and fear. Where do the earthquakes come from? Why is there an eclipse? What are the shooting stars doing? And awful cults of sacrifice to try and ward off what are in fact natural events. And war, and rape, and the kidnap of other peoples and the enslavement of them. All of this goes on, gradually inching up to the point where you can brew beer, a breakthrough in my view, domesticate animals, separate one kind of corn from another. So very millimetrical progress, but terrible struggle, sacrifice, pain, misery, and above all, fear and ignorance. And you have to believe this if you believe in monotheism. For the first 97, 98,000 of this, heaven watches with indifference. Oh, there they go again. That whole civilization's just died out. Well, what are you going to do? They're raping each other again. They're poisoning they think that the other tribe has poisoned the well, so they're going to kill all their children. All of this. Just watch all that. 3,000 years ago at the most, it's decided, no, we've got to intervene now. You have to believe it. You have to believe it. And the revelation must be personal, must appear. So we'll pick the most backward, the most barbaric, the most illiterate, the most superstitious, and the most savage people we can find in the most stony area of the world. We won't appear to the Chinese, who can already read. We won't appear in the Indus Valley, where they know a thing or two and they're already, they're very far advanced. No. We'll appear to this brutal, enslaved, hopeless, superstitious crowd, and we'll force them to cut their way through all of their neighbors with slaughter, genocide, and racism, and settle on the only part of the Middle East where there's no oil. And all subsequent revelations occur in the same district. And without this, we wouldn't know right from wrong. There is only one cure for world poverty that's ever been found or ever will be, and it's very simple. And it can be phrased very simply too. It's called the empowerment of women. Go to Bangladesh or Bolivia. I have to ask you to hold your applause, though I love you. Go to Bangladesh or Bolivia, give women control over their reproductive cycle, throw in a handful of corn if you can, make them not just the beasts of burden and the beasts of childbearing that they become, and the floor will rise, it just will. It never fails anywhere. Against this one solution, the Catholic Church has set its face. The efforts of the missionary church in the Third World mean more people die, not less. It's as simple as that. More famine, more disease, more ignorance, more random and avoidable death.
Christopher, respond.
No, I'm just want to finish the point. What I'm saying is that had it been addressed at the local level, it would have never become an international phenomena that it became. It should be addressed at the local level, like Signy did. When the Philadelphia Inquirer decided to publish that same cartoon, they called the Muslim community and said, we want to do something about this and we want to create dialogue. Now that was responsible. That was socially responsible.
Christopher, go ahead.
When Dr. Samuel Johnson had finished his great lexicography, the first real English dictionary, he was visited by various delegations of people to congratulate him, including a delegation of London's respectable womanhood who came to his parlour in Fleet Street and said, Doctor, we congratulate you on your decision to exclude all indecent words from your dictionary. And he said, ladies, I congratulate you on your persistence in looking them up. I think anyone who understands that story, which I'm pleased to see everybody obviously does, will see through the sinister piffle we were just treated to just now. If people are determined to be offended, if they will climb up on the ladder, balancing it precariously on their own toilet system, to be upset by what they see through the neighbour's bathroom window, there's nothing you can do about that. The imams in Denmark did the following. First, they invited the intervention of 22 foreign ambassadors in Denmark's internal affairs. Itself a disgrace. The Danish Prime Minister quite rightly repudiated it. Then they added 2 cartoons of their own, drawn by them, one of them showing the Prophet Muhammad in the shape of a pig. Then they shot those around the Muslim world until they could get kindling going under the embassies of a small democracy in the capital cities of countries where demonstrations are normally not allowed. They violated Danish diplomatic immunity. They tried to sabotage the Danish economy. There were random pogroms and attacks on individual Scandinavians. And David Cesarini says he doesn't like the reminiscence of the 1930s that is inscribed in the cartoon. I don't like the reminiscence of the 1930s that is involved in a Kristallnacht against Denmark, put up by religious demagogues and thugs. And that's what needs to be condemned.
we have the same job we always had, to say as thinking people and as humans that there are no final solutions. There is no absolute truth. There is no supreme leader. There is no totalitarian solution that says that if you will just give up your freedom of inquiry, if you will just give up, if you will simply abandon your critical faculties, a world of idiotic bliss can be yours. You will certainly lose the faculties, and you may not know as a result that the idiotic bliss is even more idiotic than it looks. But we have to begin by repudiating all such claims. Grand rabbis, chief ayatollahs, infallible popes, the peddlers of surrogate and mutant quasi-political religion and worship, the dear leader, the great leader. We have no need of any of this. And looking at them and their record and the pathos of their supporters, I realized that it is they who are the grand impostors. And my own imposture this evening was mild by comparison. Thank you very much.